When we talk about kind of the recipe that y'all have, especially on offense, how much of that with getting to the free throw line, offensive rebounding and such, is to mitigate sometimes when you have stretches, maybe like the last 3 games where field goal percentage might not have been as good as it has been throughout the course of the rest of the season?
I think the thing that hurt us the most in the previous game was our turnover rate, because even if your field goal percentage is whatever it was, 4% lower than what our average was, you can endure that if you're getting the same volume of offensive rebounds and free throw makes. 22% of our possessions, we turned it over. And so now our offense is hurting our defense because a team that is defensive minded is scoring in a broken floor / transition, and they're getting their defense set. And so compound impact on both sides of the ball when you turn the ball over. Through 16 league games, I think 25% of our points are from the free throw line. And like I explained to our guys, some of those free throw line makes are also off of an offensive rebound putback foul. So they're not separate categories. We're second in the league in offensive rebound percentage. We're, I think, 6th or 7th in the nation in offensive rebound percentage. But some of that bleeds into 25% of our points are coming from the free throw line. But if you're giving the ball to the other team, regardless of what your field goal percentage is that day, you're losing the offensive rebounds, you're losing the free throw makes, you're obviously losing an opportunity to shoot a ball, and you're compounding that because you're not back in transition, particularly when they're live ball. So non-steal turnover percentage, we've been really good at. You don't want to turn the ball over, but you hope somebody kicks it out of bounds or whatever happens. And now your defense is set. Our live ball turnovers were too many. I think it was 10 out of our 16 were live ball. So now we give up 12 points in transition in what was the slowest game that we've played this year. So 63 possession game, 20% of the time you're turning it over. And of those turnovers, 10 of them are live ball that lead to 12 points. So they're getting 20% of their points in transition. So I don't know where to delineate. Hey, you didn't shoot it as well. I understand. But the other factors that I mentioned to me are more of our recipe in regards to what we count on.
When you look at free throws, crashing the glass, keeping turnovers low,
yep.
When you put those kind of things together, is that in essence also looking ahead at kind of tournament play, because those things maybe you suffer a little bit less vacillation when you get into those kind of more high pressure situations?
Well, the game shortens, in my opinion, and all of the whiteboard stats that you've heard me talk about the last 4 years, all of those quotas, all of the things that are our objectives statistically in those categories are all based on teams that advance in the NCAA tournament. And that's how it started years and years ago. And then each year we study those teams to try to, upon arrival, we were running what we called cover 2 defensively. And now we're running Seattle 3 in our last 2 years. Well, the premise behind that they're completely different. And so last year after Auburn, we threw away everything we were doing offensively and started anew. And now this year we've kept a lot of that, but we're doing some things early in the possession that are kind of on the front end of what we do if we don't score later in the possession, which is the same as last year. But the numbers on what correlates to winning, regardless of style of play, we study those numbers every year. And you're going to play fast teams, you're going to play slow teams, but every timeout is 2.5 minutes long. So the game is very choppy, and the game becomes shorter. And so when the game is shorter and you're playing an opponent that you don't know and they're playing someone they don't know, and categorically speaking, officials that don't know either, what is it that you can still control, so to say, regardless of locale or opponent? And I think those things, that's why we track those things also nationally. Like, I think it's a big deal that we're number one in the nation in free throw attempts. I think it's a big deal that we're number one in free throw percentage in our league, partly because we know that that's part of the recipe.
Buzz, y'all had 2 previous SEC losses and came back and had really impressive wins after those losses. How do you do that? And what are the reasons? It's just the quality that this team has?
That's one thing I mentioned when I talked to those guys, Lucci and Dave on Mondays. If you were to divide the league into thirds, the first 6 games, the next 6 games, the third 6 games, in lap 1, we lost 1 game. That was at Kentucky. So when we lost at Kentucky, we were 5-1. And then in the second lap, per se, we lost 1 game. That was at Arkansas. And then obviously in this lap, with 2 games to go, we lost 1 at Mississippi State. I do think the response by our guys and by our staff has been tremendous. But I think the other thing that I mentioned this morning when I was talking to them on the whatever that is, I think the consistency of our response, regardless of result, has been really good. I think it's really hard. We were 6-5, and we had 2 quad 4 losses on December the 20th. And so to go from that point and be the highest accruing, we've went faster up the net than any team ever. I understand the net hasn't been around a long time. But handling the success, that response has been just as good as the response when we've lost. Because up until the other day, we'd only lost twice. And I think that's hard to do, to be able to be accountable and responsible the next day, regardless of the result of the previous day. And hopefully that comes to light again tomorrow.
Do we get to just take Tyrese for granted because he's been so...
I don't think there's any question we take him for granted. And I'm a little on edge anytime somebody says something about Boots, not you, just anybody, because I get kind of defensive about any of our guys. But like that's kind of my whole point. And I just literally talked to our guys about that. Like, what becomes familiar becomes for granted. You got to be careful. Hey, guys, you understand we didn't lose a game in the month of February? Nobody said that to you, did they? No. That was the first time we lost in February. Nobody's saying that. Well, what about Boots? Oh, man, Boots, man, he's struggling. What's wrong with him? Hey, nothing. He's going to be fine. And so I think that we take for granted sometimes the players. I think sometimes we take for granted the ride that we've been on. And nobody ever wants to lose. But that's kind of been some of the points that I've made since we lost in Starkville, is not taking for granted some of what's familiar and being predictable in what we're counting on you to be. We're not a predictable, we're going to turn the ball over 10 times live ball. We're not predictable, Henry's going to have 1 rebound in the game. Jew's going to have 1 rebound in the game. Boots is only going to score 5 points, all from the free throw line. Those things are not predictable. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect, because the last game, Jew was our second leading scorer and was a big part of why we won. So it's not that we have to play perfect, but over time, you begin to take for granted the accountability and the predictability. So I anticipate Boots will be more than fine. He always has been.
Let's get some TV questions. Has the process changed at all preparing for this game? Just going under a new coach with the new coaching staff that they have, and I guess how do you mix what you've seen from them all year with a one-game sample with the new head coach?
Well, he was my college coach, and I know nobody knows that, but that's who I work for. And so I was very close and am very close with Coach Davis, and that's Coach Case has been with him for, I think, 14 years. And they did play different. It was their first home win. It was the highest point total that they had all season. They played way faster. They ran less plays, much more freedom, particularly with their perimeter guys. So it's hard to know. Like, we're prepared on what they had done prior to Coach Davis being let go. And then obviously we've studied their game against LSU multiple times. But which way is it going to go in their second game under Coach Case? It's hard to know. And it's a dangerous team to play because they're a very emotional team after all that they've been through in the last 5 days, particularly coming off their best performance of the year. They had 2 road wins prior to their win against LSU, and their third win was different than their previous 2 wins. And so we did a kind of a combination of both, and that's how we've presented it to our guys.
Just how important is it to kind of get that bounce back, especially getting closer to March?
Well, we have a chance to finish with a 6-3 road record. You'd have to do some research. I would say in the annals of time, that would rank pretty high in winning percentage on the road and conference play at Texas A&M. So that'll get us to +6, so it'd be huge.
A&M announced today that their student athletes are launching a mental health initiative. I know Henry's on the leadership team there. I don't know if you knew about that, but just any impressions of that, and how nice is it to see that Henry's a part of something like that?
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with that. Anything with mental health, I'm 1,000% for in any sort of way, whether they're an athlete or not. I think this generation is dealing with a lot, particularly when you talk about they also lived through a global pandemic. So I think that there's a lot of things that need to be flushed out. I don't think it has anything to do with their athletes, but whatever we're doing to support our athletes, I'm all for. Henry needs to be on every committee in the country in every sort of way. I think earlier this week he was also appointed the men's basketball representative for Division I. There's only one, and he was appointed that by Mr. Sankey, which I think someday we'll probably be voting for Henry as president. So all the reps he can get on any committee, I'm for that.
Coach Case was your coach at Oklahoma City.
Mm-hmm.
What any fond memories?
It's just I don't really know, Travis, how to process it. I mean, obviously I was involved when Kermit hired him at middle. He had the highest winning percentage in 13 years as a 4-year college coach. We won a national championship my second year there. He went on to win another national championship 2 years later. He's since coached in junior college at 2 different junior colleges in Oklahoma. Was a really, really good player at Oklahoma State with Coach Self. And his son played at Kansas and is an assistant at Kansas now. Known him, obviously, since he was a little baby. I'm not old, but I'm not young anymore. But for me to be a manager at an NAIA school, and then in game 17 of my 16th year as a head coach, to play on the road against who I swept floors for and washed socks and practice gear, it's like, I don't know, is it ironic? Is it deja vu? Is it cool? Is it we need to win regardless of who the coach is? You know, I had a reunion after my 10th year as a head coach and brought every player that I had coached, every assistant that I'd hired, student manager, student trainer, every president and AD that hired me, and then anyone that I work for. So anyone that I work for, brought them all to Blacksburg for 3 days. It was like it's one of the coolest things I've ever been a part of. And we had 88 former players there, loads and loads of adults. And Coach Case was there. And so, yeah, I mean, he gave me a dorm room by myself. That was a big deal. I got to work intramurals from 6 to 9 at night, Monday through Thursday night, because I had keys to the gym. That was $100 a month. That was huge. I graduated in 2 years, which was a miracle. We won a national championship, and because it was NAIA, I got to do whatever Coach wanted me to do, learn to coach, go recruiting, wash his car, pick up his clothes from the cleaners. Same stuff I did for Coach Orr in regards to the reps that I was able to get, because nobody cared what I was doing because I didn't know, but there were no rules because it was junior college and NAIA. And so I've always been ultra grateful that I met Coach in October of '90, and then I rode him every week of my college career. He was an assistant at OCU, and they won a national championship in 1992, and Daryl Johnson was hired as the head coach at Baylor. And then Coach Case was promoted as the head coach at OCU. And so, you just never know about relationships and where they'll cross over and where all the wires are intertwined. But, yeah, I'm very thankful that Coach hired me, and I know he's having fun. I watched his press conference, and he was telling them to shoot pull-up threes and alley-oops and dunks. And so that's why I don't know how to answer his question on how they're going to play. But he knows he's only going to be the coach there this week and next week. And so I know the impact that he had on my life and all of our players. And I would say that he's been a large part of all of their team in recruiting them there. So I know that they played really hard. They played really, really hard the other night, and I anticipate they'll do the same tomorrow.
Which of your current players do you think would be most likely to have to go up against down the road? Unexpectedly.
Well, I've always tried to hire the players that I thought would be good in coaching. Beatty was one of them. Jamie McNeely was one of them. I told Justin Robinson that. Justin's still playing. I've told Four that. I told Four, hey, I'll be retired by the time you're coaching. So if you don't hire me as your coach, or I'm going to steal all your mail out of your mailbox every day except for your bills. Yeah, I think this year's group, to be honest, will have a lot of. I tell them that a lot, to be honest. I think there'll be a lot of guys that once they start their second career, it'll be in coaching. Four would be for sure at the top of that list, but I think there'll be several of them that do it.
All right, I guess a wrap.